What happens when a Las Vegas Reformed Jewish rabbi and a Las Vegas Presbyterian pastor have a conversation as friends? They discover that no matter where you live or what you believe, faith matters. In this episode of Faith Matters, Rabbi Sanford Akselrad from congregation near Tamid and Reverend Adrian from Green Valley Presbyterian Church talk about ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, and if technology could ever replace spiritual leaders and communities of faith.
Adrian, good to be with you again.
Hey, it's good to be with you.
All right. Listen, this podcast has been going around for a while, and it's really rewarding.
You think anyone's still listening?
Well, they come up to me and they say they really enjoyed it.
Oh,
they
good.
enjoyed our interaction.
Good.
So, yeah, we got to do a shout out to our wives because they're the ones who come to us.
That's right.
we need a few more people there. Okay. We come up with these topics, and I don't know where they come from. Sometimes they just come to me because I see something in the newspaper, or maybe it's something that people are talking about. This whole, what do they call it? Chat GPT, what do they call it? Artificial intelligence, AI.
Yes.
So I came across this story, and the title of the story was "Hundreds Attend Lutheran Service Generated by Chat GPT." An entire service, and I'm looking at the picture. This was actually in Germany, and there's a church filled with, it looks like 300 or 400 people, and the whole service was generated by artificial intelligence. Dear friends, it is an honor for me to stand here and preach to you as the first artificial intelligence at this year's convention of Protestants in Germany, the avatar said with an expressionless face and monotonous voice. A 40-minute service. I don't know. Do you think we're going to be replaced? Should we go on the picket line and make sure that in our contracts they're not allowed to replace us with a virtual minister or rabbi?
This raises all kinds of questions, and it goes back to something we touched on earlier, but that is to be made in the image of God.
Or as I said, B'Tselem Elohim in Hebrew,
yes,
right?
Yeah. And so there is something that you're never going to get from artificial intelligence, and that is a person made in the image of God, wrestling with the truths of Scripture and asking, how can we apply this to our life? And here's how I've experienced this in my life. Here's my personal story. Sure, AI can come up with a story, but it's fictitious. That's not based on real life. That's not based on real examples. And so you miss, I believe, that interaction. Part of the question I have today is, how is AI going to radically change communities of faith?
It's going to be interesting. So I go back to something that we discussed, and that was knowledge and wisdom.
Yes.
Hands down, AI is going to beat us on knowledge.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
It scours the internet, and its ability to, quote, get all this knowledge, so it's great regurgitating the facts or making some kind of outline based upon the absorption of thousands of sermons. But it doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have what we call in Hebrew a neshama, a soul. It's never going to say, where am I? It's never going to do introspection or reflection. It's never going to wonder whether its words move someone to tears or to a smile of joy. It just is.
It's never going to be saying, Hinene, I'm here, Lord. Where do you want me to go today? What do you want me to do,
so
right?
On one level, it's going to be a very useful tool because, having a huge database is going to be so useful. Not everyone can remember everything, and I think it's going to be a useful tool. But when we think
that's why you have Roberta and Leslie.
Yeah. when we think that the tool is going to replace the tool maker or the person who holds the tool, now we're in trouble in society, because deep down, and we talked about B'Tselem Elohim, that goes to the heart of the creative spirit. Does it not? That creative spirit that produces something that has never been produced before. And it could be art, it could be writing, could be a sermon, could be a book. Even if the, quote, artificial intelligence produced that, it would not do it with a soul. It would just regurgitate facts, but in a way that was unique to ChatGPT. So
Right.
I don't think we're going to be, quote, replaced, but we do have to wrestle as a society the place of artificial intelligence to make our lives more meaningful and the things that we do perhaps more precise, where we might be prone to human error. The ChatGPT or the artificial intelligence can be a good resource. But
For example, maybe you want to make a new policy at Congregation near Tamid.
it could research all the policies
right?
that have ever been done.
And it can write a policy for you, I don't know in how long, but an hour, half hour? I don't know how long these search engines take.
It could take 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Here's your policy. But does AI have the ability to wrestle with the question, what is the right choice in this circumstance?
There you go.
Right? And I don't believe it does. Because sometimes in life, we may look at two choices, and neither choice may be the one that we want to make. But we have to make a choice. And we may not feel good about either one. But there is something, at least in our faith tradition, which would say, but in that case, what is the better choice, right?
And what would you base that on? Would you base it on scripture? What serves the greatest common good? Would you use your gut or all of the above?
I think you'd have to go with all the above. Yeah. I mean, is it going to harm more people to do this than to do that? For example, if maybe this is an overused analogy, but we're told, thou shalt not lie. That's a basic commandment, right? We grow up learning the 10 Commandments. But
yet
lying was the right thing when Corrie ten Boom in the Netherlands hid so many Jews in her home and said, there's no one here. Right?
Yeah.
So on the one hand, she lied, but she saved human life. She saved people made in the image of God.
Artificial intelligence would have taken it very literally.
Yes, yeah. And Corrie ten Boom, just one name, just a figure who's tremendously influenced many of us today, but story after story like that. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who is imprisoned under Hitler's regime, he's faced with this same question. But in this case, when both responses you might say are wrong, but what's the better one? What's the right one in this case? Those are tough questions. AI, I don't believe, can wrestle with that.
And I would have to agree with you that. But what I'm also fearful of is whether we wrestle with it.
With that question.
Yeah, as human beings, the moment we stop wrestling with good and evil, right and wrong, and using, for example, our faith to help guide us, not only when times are tough, but when choices are difficult to be made. So the examples that you gave, for example, I would have to imagine that they drew upon the deep gut spiritual truths that they grew up with or that they embraced.
Right.
And the highest one is preserving human life.
Yeah.
And that can't be taught to a machine. And even as human beings, when we look around this world, there are people who struggle to understand it. And life has no meaning and is dispensable and disposable. And that's part of what we preach all the time, is how important every single life is. And when we believe that, that will mean that people we know and don't know will feel seen and heard, and that as we construct laws in society, as we conduct our business, as we greet people in our houses of worship, we will find our common sense of humanity and the soul in every single person.
And we may pay a price for having to come to that fork in the road where we have to decide, but in this choice, in this situation, what's the better choice?
When times are difficult, yeah.
I believe Corrie ten Boom, we could look this up, but I believe she's listed among the righteous Gentiles.
Yeah.
She lost her entire family.
So that would be the most, extreme case.
Of course.
And that's why I bring it back home to the everyday for our listeners, so that they understand, very few are going to be called upon to hide Jews, I hope, right? But they might be called upon to speak up and be a witness to an accident that they saw. They might be called upon to stand up for a fellow student or someone at work who has been picked upon or wrongly accused, and say, no, this is not right. And the choice then is, do I just keep my mouth shut and not be bothered, or do I stand up, as you said, Hineni, here I am, and I need to speak truth. I need to be there for my fellow human beings. And artificial intelligence can't do that. But human beings sometimes are reluctant to do what they can do because they are afraid. So we can't be like the machines. We humans have to find our way to be more fully human and find what we call B'Tselem Elohim, the fact that we are created in God's image.
And that's not to say that we cannot benefit from AI.
Absolutely, yeah. This is one of the great gifts God gave us, right? The ability to be creative and to create tools that will help all humanity and help us, live in a world, we hope, that will be more meaningful, more knowledgeable for everybody.
Right.
Well, we hope that our listeners got a little something out of this, and we really
thank everyone. I hope they did.
I really appreciate it, as I know you do, everyone supporting this podcast and sharing it with their friends as our listeners grow in numbers. And
maybe they want to send us some questions.
I think that would be great.
Would that be great?
Well, now...
So how would they send us a question?
I think, until we formally develop our own, site for this podcast, I think the easiest thing is to have them write, in my case, Rabbi Akselrad at Congregation near Tamid. We're at 55 North Valley Verde in Henderson, Nevada. And in your case?
You can write to Reverend Adrian Dahl at Green Valley Presbyterian Church, 1798 Wigwam Parkway, Henderson, Nevada, 89074. We would love to have your questions.
Love to hear from you. In fact, you know what? I may write Adrian a letter right now.
We'd love to know someone's listening.
That's right. Adrian, I was listening. Rabbi Sandy.
Yes.
Thank you so much again for listening and hearing us discuss matters of faith, because matters of faith deepen our faith, and for both of us, our faith matters. Shalom and thank you.
Shalom.
Faith Matters features Rabbi Sanford Akselrad from Congregation near Tamid and Reverend Adrian Dahl from Green Valley Presbyterian Church, and is produced by Leslie Snadowsky. We hope you join us again for our next podcast episode of Faith Matters.